Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another recording of Shadowverse. Today is February the 1st. Starting a little bit later today than normal. I just played more of the current game I'm playing, which is Trine now, Trine Enhanced Edition. I finished playing Lorelei. I did two kind of hour-long episodes of playing the Game of Life, which there's just not enough there to really can make a whole series out of playing the Game of Life. And frankly, the Game of Life has some major flaws. It is, as best as I can figure, a dumbed down version of Monopoly, somewhere much closer to Candyland than Monopoly, and about the middle. It's got some weird implications and forced normative lifestyles, as it were. You can in the game pick a same-sex couple to get married, but then the game will try to push you very much to have kids and very much to have jobs and buy houses and just live that old-fashioned American dream, which doesn't work for a lot of people. And in all fairness, you would have quite a struggle to try and make a game where you play the game of life and then each player would have to vote as to who lived the best life, something closer to like that joke game Roy in Rick and Morty. But that would be probably a better idea. And the game of life in a digital form is it's missing a lot. It has like one song that repeats all over. There's some sound effects at the end of the game that repeat quite a lot, and you can't skip him. You can't drag and drop money. You can't easily spin the wheel. Every action is built around spinning the dumb wheel in the middle of the game of life, and it feels like there should be some other actions. The event cards are pretty generic. They claim 3 mini games, but really there's only 2, and then a spin the wheel mini game, where it should have been much closer to having 10 or 20 mini games and moved in the digital format. Now there is a Game of Life too, so maybe all of my grievances have been addressed in that in that aspect. What are we doing today? Well, either Bloodcraft or Portalcraft or Havencraft or Forestcraft. Alright. Let's go over 1 day left for the limited time bundle, which means 1 day left, I bet, until we get the new expansion and we can open these 15 packs. We have a pack here that we earned, so we can go ahead and open that. Finishing Lorelei, it's a weird story because unlike the Cat Lady, which is a real horror story, there's much more of a character drama going on, and the real horror in Lorelei is kind of the theme of living your life and growing up and becoming an adult, whereas the Cat Lady was a more suicidal person that was fighting these crazy parasites and trying to kill them, and so it was a desperate, horrific, gory, physical journey, struggle all throughout the Cat Lady story, and there's a lot less of that, but there's still some of that in Lorelei. Also, the story doesn't, I think, benefit much by the way I've heard it is that the Cat Lady is actually the first game in this trilogy called the Devil Came Through Here trilogy, and then the remake of Downfall, not the original Downfall, was changed to be in canon with the Cat Lady. Let's try Portalcraft, why not? We're gonna lose no matter what anyways. That's not a positive attitude, certainly. And then Lorelei is the third game in the Devil Came Through Here trilogy, and I feel like had they all been separate games that maybe made winks and nods to being maybe in the same universe, that would have probably been better. Probably would have been better if none of the events of Downfall or Lorelei happened at the same time or in the same place, but that they went fairly heavy to reveal that actually the events of all of those games are happening in a kind of timey-wimey parallel, because you definitely see sections of the game that are not just callbacks to the Cat Lady, but scenes from the Cat Lady that you right after the Cat Lady would have dealt with it. So yeah, I think the Cat Lady stands better on its own than having it, and that's something we've seen certainly with other games too, and other stories. The Matrix is a great example of that. The Matrix is a much better movie if it stands on its own instead of having the Animatrix, which I don't think many people would consider any of those animated shorts actually in canon, but Matrix 2, Matrix 3, and almost certainly the Matrix 4 that they're working on, all probably are not worth existing. I think the best thing they could do with the Matrix 4 is a soft reboot by simply having it be thematically the same but in a completely different alternate universe. And there's certainly ways you could do that. You could say the events of all the previous Matrixes were actually inside of a simulation inside of a simulation, and the real world that you're shown in Matrix 4 is actually a much different experience in a different kind of world. One perhaps not taken over by robots. Let's see. If I do this, I can do that. Then I can do that. And I can attack there. So yeah, there isn't a lot to say about Lorelei without spoiling it. It was interesting to see a slight increase in ambition as far as trying to use Unity, although they're still using basically a point-and-click adventure engine inside of Unity. The start screen is about the most visually polished section of Lorelei, and the rest of the game looks fine and on occasion has some experiments with 3D that they probably didn't need to do. The story is fine, but not what I was expecting. And so, at best, I would say I just would not want to see them go back and try to make any more Cat Lady sequels. Like, I just don't think that that's worth people's time. I would much prefer to see the creators of the Cat Lady go on and move to the next thing that they would want to make. And then yeah, I'm playing Trine, and in a funny way, perhaps I'm just becoming a dirty old man at this point, but from the very beginning, the idea of Trine as the name made me think, were they thinking about calling that game Trouble, which is a romantic relationship between three people, which would be very ballsy. Like, even the adult visual novels and adult games that come out, there's very few games out there, very few stories or games that introduce the idea of a throuple, not trouble. I mispronounced it there. Which that would be interesting, certainly. Uh, but instead, I will almost certainly have to refer to them as a trio. And there's definitely something in the first couple hours of playing this that I have realized I have a specific distaste for narrators, and they're kind of wasting their dialogue and writing, and wasting a bit of time by, at the beginning of each level of trying, having a narrator talk about what's happening, when it should obviously just be the three characters being a female thief, a kind of lecherous old wizard, and then a idiotic soldier. Those three characters should do kind of the visual novel thing and have a zoomed in perspective where you can see their face, and they should talk to each other. I don't care if the lips don't flap. They are talking to each other, but it's zoomed out at the same scale as the game, which I think the game itself in Trine 1 is probably zoomed out a little bit too much. A lot of Trine, as a game that is supposed to be all about presenting you puzzles where at least two of the three people's skills are needed to pass the puzzle, a lot of it so far has been very doable simply using the thief's rope swinging ability, which then allows me to just manipulate the physics and swing all the way around the edge and to the top of most platforms. There's also definitely some weirdness with the wizard's ability, which just pops up a mouse cursor where you can grab an item and lift it and levitate it on top of conjuring items out of air, and that leaves the warrior's ability kind of lacking. Although he is your go-to to fight with, he is also still has the same amount of health and mana as every other of the other two characters, so it's fairly a poor idea to spend too much time playing as the soldier. Most of the time I'm playing as the thief so far, even in sections where they clearly intended for me to learn about the abilities of the wizard. I kept turning back and wanting to play as the thief. And already I've seen one puzzle that I did not understand what the legitimate way to solve it was. There's a decent amount of collectibles in each level, but I suspect there might not actually be that many levels, so I may finish trying Enhanced Edition fairly quickly and then move on. With the end of Lorelei, that's pretty much it for the second Halloween, and so now it's just a matter of me scheduling second Halloween and scheduling all the other stuff, which I do need to take a break and do that. And then the only other thing I can talk about as far as the accountability section is that I've been driving myself crazy with my Wi-Fi connection, doing a ridiculous amount of work, trying to get it to work, breaking it, then getting it back to working condition. It seems like it's in working condition now. Trying to get the power up as high as possible on my Wi-Fi router, because I think that's at the core of the big problem, is that somebody somewhere, I bet a couple weeks ago, installed yet another Wi-Fi in the ever overpopulated region of Wi-Fis. And it's just more and more people all competing for the same spectrum. 5 gigahertz was supposed to somewhat help that, and it kind of has helped that, but it has not done as much as I would have liked, really. And there is definitely an internet service provider in my area that is flooding the region with a whole bunch of Wi-Fi access points automatically that people don't know about, people don't know how to log into, and there should be probably a law saying you can't just turn on Wi-Fi routers throughout an entire city and flood out the competition. To my surprise, for a brief second there, I think I actually even got the third radio on my DDWRT router that's like a WCAM or ACM. Yeah, it's WACM 3200 is the model, and that third radio has never really worked before, but for a brief second I did get it to work. I don't know what I'd really do with it. The one thing is I could put it in a client mode so it could connect to another person's Wi-Fi, which, okay, that might work then, but you would almost have to then be able to log into your neighbor's Wi-Fi and their internet service from some other company, and then you probably still need to do some more configuration there to load balance where the WAN port would go. And so that's more of an intriguing thought than a practical thing that I could actually experiment with. Particularly if it comes down to having to actually ask somebody for their Wi-Fi password that you'd almost certainly get a no for. Yeah. Yeah. But I guess that's the accountability section. So far the network is working good here, and I've been able to go a few hours on my Wi-Fi without it stuttering or having any problems. There was a point definitely where I had the power level much higher for the 5G, which is the one that is losing signal. But the trade-off is with those settings that the speed was much slower. So yeah, I had to struggle really to figure out which setting it is. But the problem with it is there are three options under DDWRT under the wireless. One is a channel, and then one is a channel width, and the channel widths only work on specific channels. If you're not just, if you try to expand it, and you want to expand the channel width because that gives you more bandwidth, more speed. Well, speed and bandwidth are different, but layman's terms, it feels like more speed. And then there is a third extension channel pull down box, and each one of these kind of affect the others, and only a small subset of the multitude of combinations between those three options are actual valid ones that my cell phone can connect to and that the Wi-Fi router can actually transmit on, and they haven't really polished it. And at the core, what that leaves me with is that I can only do the 80 hertz width instead of a 160 hertz width, which theoretically would work, but there's no channels that router supports that are in line with the 160 hertz, and probably on the default programming, but the default firmware instead of the custom DDWRT firmware, that wouldn't be an issue because it does seem to work there. Of course, if I went back and installed the basic firmware, I'd be missing, I imagine at this point 85% of everything I'm doing. That is, of course, always the danger with tinkering and using custom firmware and using custom code, is that you open the door for a lot more options, and that opens the door for a lot of options that are wrong. Not that you should struggle or endeavor to create a system that gives somebody all the options, knowing full well that some options are wrong. It would be silly, for instance, to make an open source software that allows you to type the letter like Y and enter, and that just deletes everything on your operating system. That's a option you could give people, but it's a wrong option. And actually, you probably could do that on Linux because it has an alias factor, so you probably could just alias a much longer command to erase everything to the letter Y. Let's see if we can make a copy.
Follow my tune, and away we go.
Go ahead and evolve that and attack here.
Give me strength. I'll play my
I spent a lot of the weekend, the times I wasn't sleeping, trying to rest my voice a little bit. So I am back to a point where I probably want to just hurry up through the video game news and in the stream so I can get back to trying. Yeah, some other things I'm trying out on my routers, limiting the maximum number of ports to a smaller amount and limiting the cache for DNS mask to a smaller amount. I think there is a possibility that the DNS mask software that was crashing. I also got rid of, have temporarily suspended my Watchdog script that's supposed to reboot the router if there's an internet connection, because I think either that was getting in the way or it was also potentially taking up CPU processes, because it was an infinite loop just going in circles, and that very well may not be the best way to do that. Almost certainly it's not the best way to do that.
a place to call home.
Right, so we can hit this and kill that. We can hit that and kill that.
I'll play my part.
And we can hit that. And then I can survive one turn, and that's it.
This is my world.
This is grave.
So yeah, let's start covering the video game news, and let's just wrap it up, or begin the extremely slow process of wrapping it up here. Here we have a game on Steam called Mars Mission, which is tagged educational. To me, it looks just like an asset flip game. Free to play, German only, not VR, which a lot of these nowadays do seem to be more VR. But yeah, otherwise, nothing there that would make that to the fall list. A little surprising to see a German game, a German only game. We don't see a lot of that. Let's see. Next, we have a game called Yeti with periods in front of the first three letters, but not the fourth. So, yeah, don't know what that means. Definitely looks like an asset flip game, and the trailer is very flashy. 99 cents, full audio, English. Let's see. Next we have Ambrosia from Kagura Games, which looks like an adult game with maybe an adult patch out there. Otherwise it's just an RPG Maker game. like so many others. $13.49, English, Chinese, Japanese. Not seeing any DLC at the moment, but pretty much anytime you see an RPG Maker game like this with skin tight clothing where you can see the belly button through the dress, you pretty much can assume that there is some uncensored nude patch that's totally not worth owning the game or playing the game. Like, ideally, the idea of Steam allowing full adult games on their storefront, and they've sort of done that, but then they've sort of put a little bit of censorship in it. But ideally, if you start to have a real marketplace for adult games, then good adult games, theoretically, if you believe in the idea of the market improving quality of products, which maybe you shouldn't, but like theoretically, we would see better adult games on Steam, and the death of kind of bad-looking adult games like that, or low-effort RPG Maker games. I saw on Uncensored Gaming, which is a YouTube channel, them talking about a phrase in Japan that they use called the Sony check that's been around for quite a long time. And the Sony check was just the colloquial way the Japanese were referring to Sony having internal censorship rules and guidelines and not allowing certain things, which I found it a little shocking in the timeline, because I thought that had mostly only been happening since the California team was put in charge of Sony Interactive Entertainment, but apparently it has been more cyclical than that, and Sony of Japan was the instigators of the Sony check, and they have been good about not enforcing it in some places and bad about over enforcing it at other times. So it's just kind of been inconsistent. And Microsoft certainly has its own internal checks, and Nintendo has their own checks too, and Steam has their own internal checks too, but there's seemingly a big difference between the level of leniency that all the other services had and Sony. Which, that's a little weird, because it's not like Sony ever felt like it was just overflowing with games, particularly if you compare it to Steam. Like, PlayStation 3 in particular might have been a point where they were very, very less lenient just to get more games on the PlayStation. But I can't imagine that at any point in the lifetime of the PlayStation 1 or the 2 or 4 that they wouldn't have at least wanted more games. But whatever. Sometimes people do things against their own interest. Here we have a game on Steam called Tower of Samsara, Hidden Treasures, which this is literally just a new take on Prince of Persia, which is a really smart move, because the remakes of Prince of Persia, the Sands of Time series, and all of those went 3D. So we haven't really had a more challenging platforming game, particularly in kind of a Middle Eastern type character. It's coming soon, English full audio. I'm going to put this on the follow list. Now, the danger certainly of this is that a game like this can be fairly frustrating, and that's why the Sands of Time were introduced. Like, at any point you might just fall to your death and have to reset back at a checkpoint if you even get that. Apparently these lanterns are the checkpoints, if I was to guess. But yeah, this is real platforming. We've seen some other 2D games, though, that introduce a decent amount of struggle also. So it's not like I feel like you have to, all 2D games have to be super easy. We've seen some other ones. And seemingly the light ability also gets rid of some darkness shadows that exist in the world. Yeah, that looks like a real game. Let's see. Next we have a game called Magical Cat Cafe and Heroes. I'm a little surprised we haven't seen more games that are trying to be cutesy and kid friendly from particularly China. This looks like a Chinese troll game to me though. $7.99 Chinese only. Maybe troll game is the wrong aspect here. Maybe it's just a comedy game. But I couldn't really tell one way or the other. This. And turn. Next we have a game called Outlaws Vr, which looks like it's a wushu type game. I don't know how much game there really is here though. Gonna have to watch the trailer. You fight a tiger, that's something. If I was to guess, either this is a secret hidden gem or this is a collection of 2 or 3 scenes that might be fun playing once. What this doesn't look like is low effort by any means. This looks visually polished. So yeah, you get into a barroom brawl and you beat up a bunch of copies of the same people. And then there's a boss. You drink food to regain your health, and you can use a sword. You can throw bombs. And then you play, like, cut the rope with rocks too. Interesting. It's free. It's English and Chinese, so I'm gonna put this on the follow list. It's early access, but that does look like something of at least some small level, like an actual game with actual polish on it. At the very least, if it is just a generic like boxing game with 2 or 3 activities, at least you have better visual polish there. So yeah, that's a shocking, happy surprise. Next we have a game that's just all Asian characters, and this looks like a RPG kind of game. Almost looks like a fighting game. It's definitely a Chinese game. There's way too much going on here. Feels like it might be an MMO. Let's see. Just have to watch the video to even figure out what's going on. Yeah, it kind of looks like it's a Diablo type clone. And a Diablo type clone in a Chinese environment is not a terrible thought. The problem though is how much is it going to really be polished towards English speakers. And I guess at a certain point I'm going to have to stop calling these Diablo clones and start calling them Hades clones. But yeah, this is early access, English not supported, Chinese only. It's tagged as an MMO with in-app purchases. Doesn't look terrible. It's just way too much text. There is definitely a possibility that I often think there's too much text because I see all this text on screen in Chinese, but perhaps it is possible that I'm just not keeping an eye out personally for the games that have English in them. So it could be that there's a lot of games with a lot of English writing and I just turn a blind eye to that because it just never would have even occurred to me to consider that factor.
Give me strength. Play my part.
So G4 is now doing this before G4, which they put out a video on YouTube and I watched it, where they've shown this new fake guy that's in charge. Let's see if we can see him. Here he is. And he says he's just like behind. And so they're doing this whole B4 thing where they are asking people to follow Discord, sign up on Reddit, YouTube, just get everybody ready to go watch Twitch TV and YouTube. But yeah, this little announcement is basically saying here that they are going to have a bunch of streamers and not really have a YouTube a TV channel, which I kind of felt like that was what they were gonna do anyways, but it seems like they're still promising a YouTube channel. I feel like that there is a reasonable room to feel a reasonable amount of room here to feel like you've been baited and switched if you were highly anticipating a TV channel, and instead they're giving you YouTube channels and individual streaming things. I still don't know if I don't feel like this whole thing is just 100% shenanigans, and that it's just a bunch of old G4 employees with nothing better to do with their lives, pretending like G4 is coming back. There is a production company that we saw made the Thanksgiving special, but who knows how much that production company is really supporting G4 as an idea. This could all just be testing the water. It could be all just shenanigans. And then you just run into the bigger point here, is that before G4 and the longer it takes for G4 to really come out, you have to decide whether that's increasing hype or is that really just wasting everyone's time, and will people realize that they really can't go back to the old ways and watch the old G4 anymore, that it just won't last. Like, it's been certainly a while since I've last gone back and tried to watch anything that I watched when I was younger, but like I certainly have like whole shelves of anime that I'd like to at some point go back and watch, but I probably would never have time, and I'd probably never have the attention span for it. So I kind of know that. And so they're pretty much just nice shelf decorations, very nice shelf decorations, but that's all they really are. Maybe they'll end up in some kind of weird film collection.
Time to get started.
But yeah, I don't know if I would ever want to watch Attack of the Show at this point, because that's been played out, and what Attack of the Show would be talking about these days is probably highly controversial, divisive things, Twitter fights and such. You'd have to really, really struggle to find the funny TikToks and Instagrams, and you could sort of talk about like the GameStop meme stuff that's going on right now with Wall Street Bets, but even that's probably a little divisive, and so Attack of the Show would have to struggle to make some kind of daily content, which that show had always struggled to make daily content. And then when you think about X Play, X-Play at best is going to have to run like reruns Monday through Thursday if it's going to be a daily show, and with one new episode every Friday covering a fairly small number of games that would be AA, AAA, and III indie games. They might replace what Giant Bomb is now no longer really doing, or at least they're not doing for free. But they probably would have to have 3 or 4 times as many people playing 3 or 4 times as many games just to kind of catch up, and they'd have to probably do like I do and look at almost every game on Steam, which, yeah, that I don't know if they can get the writing good enough in a week's worth of work to talk about games. I'm not sure if there's that many people that want to hear people talk about games. Everything has just kind of changed. And as a independent video game critic, which I guess I'm independent, no, I don't work for anybody except for YouTube, as all YouTubers basically work for YouTube. Yeah, I probably would prefer people to stick with getting their sources from trusted independent games critics instead of conglomerated corporate interested games critics. The whole Gamergate situation pushed that idea, and in part is that the mainstream video game journalism is the thing that has led to some corruption and some levels of poor confidence in video game reviews from mainstream video game journalists. So yeah, I would really hate to see a scenario personally if X-Play came out on G4 and then I was losing like hundreds of subscribers, which I only have like 400 to begin with, or hundreds of views because they've sucked all the air out of the room. But I don't think that would probably be a problem for me, because what I do is just so weird and different. But that is a thing to certainly take from X-Play, though. While Adam Sessler and Morgan Webb were the presenters and they were personalities, certainly, not every single game that they were reading scripts to and reviewing were actually played by Adam Sessler and Morgan Webb. Almost certainly, like there's no way on a weekly basis you would have had them play 2 or 3 whole games to completion, or which there was no, I guess, ever statement at all that it was actually to completion. Let's see. What can we do? We can hit this. We can do this.
You're joking, surely.
And then put that on the field.
Too much.
So, you know, if they were to bring back X-Play, I would like to see Adam Sessler really only reviewing games made by Adam Sessler, or that were reviewed by Adam Sessler.
I can devour your dreams.
And Morgan Webb only if Morgan Webb is even coming back, which I'd have to question that. Like I get the feeling Adam Sessler has nothing better to do with his life, but I think Morgan Webb has been more successful at moving on. Moving on, we have a game called Devilated, which looks like it is a Quake clone, dual shooter with some other actions with a shovel, tagged as an RPG adventure. It's $19.99 English only. There's enough of a visual polish here. There's a menu here showing actual items, and the screenshots aren't the greatest. They're calling it a gun fu experience, but I was watching the trailer play here, and it does feel like there is a potential experience here worth playing. So I'm going to put it on the following list. Although, very possibly that's not the kind of game that would be for me. Summon implants or kill this. I think I have to do this.
Is an extension of myself.
Let's defile the battlefield.
Go! Go!
So,
War is so I
hit
love
that,
the chaos.
hit that.
My life ends, but my will abides.
Just keep moving. Next, we have a game called Red Hands. This is, I feel like there have been Flash versions of this. I've heard this game called Slaps or Bloody Knuckles or Knuckles, although Knuckles is slightly different, I guess. I wouldn't encourage kids, first of all, or adults to play games of pain. That's just kind of ridiculous anyways. And doing it in a digital version, I don't think changes much. This is skinned a little bit, so it looks a little bit different, and to look more custom made. But I'd still think it would be $1.50 at most. Bunch of languages here. That's not surprising. $6 is just too expensive for what this is. And something like that, again, I would just have to feel like doesn't really deserve to be on a okay, can we do this? Yes, but then I lose.
Allow me to bestow a crimson kiss, melt under my touch.
Got your message loud and clear.
There we go.
This whip is an extension of myself. Hey, check this out!
See if we can survive here.
I'm sick of being a faceless scrub.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Keep Out, which looks like it's a tiny little character in a platformer going through a much bigger world. I'd say the animation polish looks a little asset flippy, but then it looks like there might be an actual game here in the trailer. So I'd have to see some reviews. $19.99, bunch of languages. That's pretty expensive, but I'll put it on the follow list and we'll see. Right. Deal 3 damage to an enemy.
With this payment, darkness stands with you.
Okay, so now we can hit
Your
and win.
strength is formidable.
Next, we have a game called William Gustloff's Death, which this just looks like a Titanic clone. I guess William Gustloff is a ship. $3.19 English, full audio allegedly. Nothing there of interest. Here we have a Game of Sutra article. Riot Games pushes a gender discrimination case back towards arbitration. They're taking it out of the courtroom and back into private arbitration after the court granted its motion to compel earlier this week. Yeah, courts love to allow things to go to arbitration, particularly if you've agreed to arbitration, whether you knew you did it or not. Let's see. The previous coverage of the case saw it was headed towards a settlement of $10 million, but then California's DFEH, I don't know what that stands for, stepped in and suggested the amount was too low. I don't know what the DFEH is. The bigger question is there's been so many discrimination cases that I don't even know which one this one was about or what Riot Games is accused of. 2.5 years this thing apparently has been going on, and certainly it was easy enough to not pay attention to a discrimination case because there's just so many others out there, so many other awful stories around video game companies in particular. That is something that you could certainly say I wouldn't want to see. Is I don't want to see any meme saving of a company like Electronic Arts or Ubisoft or any of these companies that have just been run terribly and made terrible games with microtransactions. I'm more than happy to let those companies fall apart and fail. And I think most meme Wall Street Bet people probably play video games, so they would be of the same opinion. I don't think too many people would say, hey, let's go save EA in particular, like one of the worst offenders. On the other hand, I could see people trying to save Nintendo if Nintendo somehow was in financial trouble and a publicly traded company, which it isn't. Not Nintendo of America or Nintendo of Japan or Nintendo of Europe. None of it, I think, is publicly traded. I could see them maybe doing something with Sega, or even Sony, which would be a mistake in my opinion. Also, but yeah, I don't think too many people would want to do anything to save Konami. Although you do have a specific scenario here where you could easily, let's see,
Get ready to fly.
X is the spell boosts cards when it dies.
This ain't ideal, is it?
I could see a bunch of memers trying to potentially like get a majority shareholdership of Konami, but then those are also Japanese companies, so I don't know if American investors could own a majority share of Konami. Plus, at a certain level, owning Konami would probably be a pretty bad idea, because particularly if you just want to like try and sell all the video game aspects of it. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Angel Wings, which is a visual novel dating sim. It is a more standard drawing of the characters. These almost look real. The only thing that I would say is a problem here is that they're all Asian. So while you do have a red-haired and a black-haired lady and a white-haired lady, and one has long hair and one has mid-length hair, here's another one. Like, it's visually interesting. It's probably not a very long story. There's maybe some inconsistency in the art, but yeah, just Asian on top of Asian on top of Asian is playing to a specific fetish, certainly. It's free, so I guess the price is right. English only. Once again, this feels like it says it's been in development since 2017, but it's not labeled as early access. It feels like this is a Chinese game that's being sold specifically to an Asian market, a American market, a Western market only, which doesn't still make any sense.
To four sufferings.
Check out my fancy footwork. Get ready to fly.
Oh, waffle cakes.
You have summoned the blade of purgation.
Next, we have a game called Golf Party, which just looks like another golf game and doesn't look particularly different or interesting. Early access for $14.99 with in-app items to purchase and in-app purchases. So that is definitely a no.
This book is an extension of myself.
Let's defy. I love the
there.
chaos.
Gamatsu has an article here. Dark Deception, Monsters and Mortals DLC Chapter Silent Hill has been announced. So, Glowstick Entertainment has this multiplayer horror party game, and they've managed to get the license from Konami, which maybe Monsters and Mortals is also published by Konami, to introduce some skins over their game in reference to Silent Hill, which it's a little surprising that Konami is willing to do anything with Silent Hill, but I bet what they want their money back, or as much money off of that product. Probably not back, that's probably the wrong way to say it. Destroy an enemy follower.
His payments. Darkness stands with you.
And then evolve.
Let your soul succumb to the void. Not
Attack there.
what was sown has been reaped.
Seriously?
Won't hurt you too much.
This book is an extension of myself.
Whipsy daisy.
I messed up there. Messed up big time, and I'm gonna probably lose because of it. Yeah, I don't see how anybody could be enthused with any like Silent Hill spin-off skins or anything like that. Although it is kind of throwing a bone. It wouldn't be terrible if Konami did let people license to write like Silent Hill novels or make their own Silent Hill games. Like maybe there's something out there somebody could do to make a good Silent Hill besides the creator of Silent Hill, who they probably wouldn't ever license to. Right.
Pain and suffering are what I live for.
Okay. Hit this. And then
As
attack
promised.
that.
By your will, O Lord.
And then hit that.
Oh, waffle cakes. Hey, check this out.
Pity is
Hit
for
that.
the weak.
Splendid.
Gamma Sutra has an article here. There's a report that mismanagement plagues Amazon's struggling push into video games. They bought that company and pretty much forgot all about it. What was that? It was Lumberyard was part of it. Which I could see that. Yeah. Amazon Crucible and Amazon Studios It spun out from the leadership's decree that devs create and exclusively use Lumbermard, Amazon's own game engine, for the creation of its game. They basically did the exact thing that so many other video game companies did and kind of ruined their own effects, their own chances because of that. Because they're just being cheap, where it would have been a lot smarter for them to simply say, use Lumberyard if you can, but we don't care, just use Unity or Unreal, whatever. There we go.
Love the chaos.
I shall give
But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Amazon's leadership is kind of just garbage all over the place. We kind of knew at the top it was garbage, so the fish rots from the head. But I guess all the middle management people are pretty bad too, and there isn't some spin-off division that's actually good at making games that just happens to be owned by Amazon, at least according to this report. Unlike what Microsoft is doing, where Microsoft is trying, at least from outward appearance, to try and buy companies that were doing pretty good at making games, giving them more money so they can do better, and then not interfering. It's the interference that's probably going to be a problem. If you want to interfere, then you should have bought failing companies or started a new companies from scratch, which yeah, and I don't know if that would really have been the right move for Amazon either. Amazon, frankly, just shouldn't be in the video game business. They shouldn't own Twitch. They should sell Twitch as soon as possible, recoup their losses, say we're getting out of the video game business and we're done with it. Is this a new background? I don't think I've seen this one before.
Time to get started.
prepare for defeat.
Yeah, this definitely feels new. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Soldier in the Darkness, which looks like just an asset flip zombie shooter. $1.19 English only. One of the things I felt around the idea of calling your game Trine is that it's just a little too simplistic. I'm glad they didn't call it Trio, but in Thruple probably wouldn't have been the right term either, although that would have been very intriguing to me. But it needed to be something closer to Trine and the Three Guardians, or Trine and the Adventures of Amalar, or whatever land they're in. Some kind of subtitle that could make the game stand out on the search, because there's quite a few games on Steam that are one-word games, and you just always run into the danger, if not now, at some point in the future there could be several games called Trine from potentially even different developers.
Pain and suffering are what I live
Hit
for.
that.
As promised.
Attack. Next we have a game called Rundom, which, with a name like that, I would think it would be an infinite runner where you play as a dominatrix, and you might take that from that character. But from the video that I've been seeing, I suspect it's just an asset flip parkour game. They are trying really hard to not show what the game is. Early access, $6.69 English, allegedly full audio. Okay. 2.
Pity is
Here
for
we
the
go.
weak.
As promised.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Dizzy 2, which I wonder if there's a Dizzy 1. I feel like there was a game called Dizzy a long, long time ago
Check out my
that
fancy
looked like these
footwork.
little egg characters. Yeah. This is free to play. And I don't know if this is just an old 80s game. It's English and Russian. Or if this is some new game that is a sequel to a very old 80s game. Unfortunately, I would say Dizzy is just not relevant enough. I don't think too many people would have remembered it. It's just one of the many like off-brand style games that came out in the early 80s that really have no relevancy. Okay, let's hit
You have
this.
summoned the blade of purgation here.
And just play this, I guess. Next, we have a game called Dragon Fury VR, which this looks like a spell VR game where you cast spells. Although it doesn't really even seem like there's too many things you even fight. Skeletons maybe, and that's it. It's actually been a surprising lack of skeletons that you fought in VR. Which I wonder if we still are at that point where the Chinese developers won't depict a skeleton and skeletons are taboo. We know that that was one of the Chinese game restrictions and their censorship, so I guess that's still the case.
This
Let's do
whip
this.
is an extension of myself.
I
This.
love the chaos.
And evolve.
I'm Swipsy Daisy.
That was delightful.
That would be weird if we started
I can't keep running from my
running
sins.
into a scenario where everybody was putting skeletons in their games, whether it needed skeletons or not, just to prove that they weren't made by a Chinese developer or marketing their game to a Chinese country. That would be a weird, very, pretty much just xenophobic at that point. Action. Wrath. Available. No. This.
You as excited as I am?
And
Well, are
then
you?
this.
Check out my fancy footwork.
Ow.
And this.
Get ready to fly.
My mask!
Hey, check this out. If you want me to hurt you, I'm so...
Yeah, I don't think Dragon Fury VR has enough here that interests me. $3.59, English full audio.
Well, are
It
you?
just it has a little bit of visual polish, but then it doesn't really show any actual gameplay that
Just
I'd actually want to play.
let me patch you up.
So the ESRB has rated Hellbound and Debriefed, Akiba's Trip Hellbound and Debriefed, and they are giving it an M17 plus for blood, sexual themes, strong language, and violence. Why it doesn't say strong language on the same level, I don't know. But what you can see here is that mature is probably about what most games that I cover are at, and there is no talk of actual nudity, so that helps certainly in the case of trying to see if you can actually play a game like that. That is what I would like to certainly do.
This whip is an extension of myself.
Let's defile the battlefield.
How are we gonna do this now?
I love
So
the
this
chaos.
and this
Daisy!
I'll see you in
and that.
How dare you? How
And then
dare
that.
you?
Too much.
So yeah. I don't know if that's really that much news, but it does say that it's coming to the West because they wouldn't bother to review it if it wasn't coming through the ESRB. Oh, that guy just wrecked me.
You have summoned the blade of purgation here.
Is there anything I can do here? I can kill one of these guys,
I'll see you in purgatory.
and I can maybe do this. And maybe do this.
To bestow a crimson kiss. Melt under my touch.
I'll see you in purgatory.
Allow me to take my
Smack that guy down. Gamatsu has an article here. Aniplex and F4 Samurai have formed a capital alliance. So the developer of Magi Record and Disney Twisted Wonderland are apparently going to work together.
It was all
Yeah, Magi Record was a Puglia Magica Modica Magica side story, which that was a anime that happened a few years ago where it's a magical girl, but then the story gets really dark and depressing and it's not for kids. Disney Twisted Wonderland, I imagine by that title, is probably somewhat similar. There's been several continuations, iterations, alternate tellings of the Magica Modica series, so I don't know if the side story games in any based on any anime really matter. I guess that is a pretty big if.
Suffering are what I live for.
Right. See if this wins.
Can't hold back. Void claws. Terminus.
Okay.
That was delightful. I'm not afraid of the light. Sink. Sink.
Interesting. Strike. By forming a capital alliance with F4 Samurai, while respecting their independence, Aniplex aims to strengthen its relationship with the developer and further enhance and expand upon the game business, which this is very much how business is typically done in Japan, is no one company is willing to take on the risk of even doing a single project, and so instead they form committees and alliances and cooperate, which at a certain level this might very well just be a case of their literally just not being enough confidence. Alright, well, what do we want to do? I want to kill this guy with this because otherwise I'm going to regret it later.
Melt under my
Check
touch.
there.
Mankind's tenacity will exterminate you, vermin.
Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Dark Pod Veil, which looks like it's nothing. For $5.99, English and Russian. That's just a garbage game. I didn't curate, but I could have definitely done it today. Alright.
Pain and suffering are what I live for.
Okay. So I've got to
Now
do
it's under my
this,
What was sown has been
and
reaped.
then that. And then this won't help me. It might win the game for me if I can get him down to 2 health.
Check out my fancy footwork.
Splendid brutality.
Alright.
Promises. Fuck something.
There we go.
You don't belong here.
We've won. This temp deck that I've bought has actually turned out to be slightly better because at least I can win here. So I should theoretically play to get more temp gems to buy more temp decks. If it even works that way, I don't think it. I'm not 100% sure it does. Next, we have a game just called Text RPG, which looks awful and is an incredibly generic name. $2.99. How many achievements is that? 50 achievements. Obviously an achievement game. Next, we have a game called The Unbreakable Chain, which looks like it's just MS Paint graphics and another low effort game for $2.39 English only.
Time to get started.
If anything, it's starting to feel very much like some Mondays or the first of the month. There's when we start to see a lot of garbage games, but it's pretty consistent every day of the month that there's a garbage game coming out, or there's a lot of garbage games coming out. Next, we have a game called Flying Girls, which this is just a side-scrolling shooter, low-effort game with Chinese girls. Early access for $3.59, bunch of languages, but oddly, Chinese not in the top 5, which I would assume they can control the order of that. I'm not 100% sure. Next, we have a game called Outlaws Vr, which is tagged as an MMORPG. Looks like a VR RPG game that's not visually polished enough to be interesting. Let's see, early access $4.99, which is a little cheap for VR. English, allegedly full audio. Yeah, nothing there of interest. Okay, what do we want to do? Rush. I think Rush is our first move.
Get ready to fly.
Next, we have a game called Spin and Roll, which looks like a Marble Madness clone with a decent amount of polish. Still could be very asset flippy, but at least this looks like a game. Although I'm not sure I really want to play any marble games, particularly when we can fall off the edges so easily. $9.99 English only. Let's see, do I want to put this on the fall list? I think no. I think I'm more than fine skipping a game like this. Right. Rush. Again.
Check out my fancy footwork. Get ready to fly.
Hit that.
Get ready
Hit
to
that.
fly.
Hit
Allow me
that.
to bestow a crimson kiss.
Let's see. Next we have a game called Plaza Kart Simulator, which looks like a joke Russian troll type game for $1.99. It's English only, but then you have all these Russian names of developers. So, yeah. 2 damage to the melee leader.
Suffering are what I live for.
And that.
Allow me to bestow a crimson kiss.
Okay. If I evolve this, that's a mistake. I should have evolved this one.
Melt under my touch.
Get ready to fly.
You're mean.
Melt under my touch.
Can I haunt you too?
Actually, that may not have been the wrong move because I'm about to die. You have to be obviously very, very careful with your life total when playing this type of class. Let's see. Gematsu has an article here. The Switch worldwide sales have topped 79.87 million. Hyrule's Age of Calamity has topped 2.84 million in the West. So we've got some other top sellers. I saw someone saying Mario Party. Maybe not Super Mario Party, but just Mario Party has been a bit of a disappointment because there's not been any new content added, or and that there was perhaps a limited amount of content for what you got originally. What you definitely can see is in the first party list of games, Animal Crossing is very much up there, and then Zelda, but Pokemon Sword and Shield, Mario Odyssey, not as good a seller as you would think. Then Mario Party, then Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, not as good. Splatoon 2, particularly almost at the bottom, just below New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. I wonder if a lot of this has to do with just how much some of these games were pushed, because some of them definitely felt like they were advertised more than others. Still need 2 more Bloodcraft victories. So we'll just keep on playing this deck until we can get 2 more victories, and it feels like we actually can get 2 more victories instead of spending 3 hours trying to win. They also announced sales numbers for some other games, which are like Luigi's Mansion, Ring Fit Adventure, Paper Mario. These are much lower numbers than the 9 million for New Super Mario Bros. Deluxe. Xenoblade Chronicles, I guess, is a first-party title. I didn't know that. And then the Mario Kart Live Home Circuit. I literally saw that on sale just a few minutes ago because it was just so expensive a thing. I'm surprised it sold at all. But yeah. Also, I guess there probably wasn't a lot of competition this Christmas if you needed to get something for your kids. Nintendo's games and Nintendo things would have been your go-to choice, as it is most years, but what considerably less competition. What computer sellers should have done is they should have tried to go very, very heavy in discounts. I don't know how much in discounts they really could go to push computers for kids, that you could say, well, this is a thing they would use at school to do the remote schooling, but also it would be powerful enough to play a certain level of games. You don't need a massive computer, frankly, to play most games. That says the person who has a massive computer and then plays games that are minimum 5 years old. It would be interesting if Valve got into the business of selling computers, at kind of starter computers, and in the purchase of a $500 to $1,000 computer, you got $500 worth of credit on the Steam storefront, because that would be a massive amount of games you could buy there, and it would be something that Valve and Steam could offer and no other platform really could. Maybe not $500, maybe $100.
Let's
But yeah, it's not uncommon to buy a new video card and get 1 or 2 games for free anyways. Microsoft could also probably offer something similar to that, in which you got a free year of Games Pass if you bought a like Surface product. That's the hardware they sell, which they've kind of forgotten about that and stopped talking about it. Moving on, we have a game called Kyber Rebirth, which looks like it is a card battler. Visually, it looks alright. There also seems to be kind of a dungeon crawling aspect to it also.
Good enough.
Or maybe 2 different types of gameplay mechanics, which would be interesting. This is early access, $7.19 English and Chinese. I'm going to put this one on the follow list. This one actually looks like it might actually succeed, or at least have a small chance to succeed. Let's go ahead and play
You have
this.
summoned the blade of purgation here. Try and break this blade.
Can we evolve this? Yes, but there's no reason to do that right now. Next, we have a game on Steam called The Captain is Dead, which seems like you are controlling several different characters.
I'll see you in purgatory.
Turn-based survival strategy puts you in the captain's chair as you try to save your crew from being blown to bits by aliens. Retro tabletop board game. $17.99 English full audio. That's too expensive. And then you have a problem here where the graphics not really doing the best of jobs showing me how this game actually plays. There's all kinds of heads-up display. And then there's all kinds of stuff in the middle of the screen. Then you have a completely different experience here. This feels very much like it's just an Among Us clone, visually. And I don't know if I really like this art style. In fact, I'm pretty certain I don't like this art style. So yeah, I think it's probably somewhat like Among Us. Not as much as you might think, though.
Extension of myself.
the battlefield.
Okay. Do I want to evolve higher?
I love
Check there. And there. Yeah, I think at the price of $17.99, they've outpriced themselves for that game, so I just am not going to put it on the fall list. Next, we have a game called Dark Treasury, which looks like it's a typewriting, teaches typewriting game of some sort, or either that or the controls are just always on screen. It does seem like you just kind of stand in one place and then you have to type things. I wonder if Dark Forest is the thing you have to type. Yep. This is $3.99 English and Russian. I don't think this is a game worth putting on the fall list. Next, we have a game called Street Karate 3, which looks like nothing. It's $2.39 English full audio. Let's hit that. And
With this payment,
that one.
darkness stands with you.
Hey, check this out.
Let your soul succumb to the void.
Feel like I could have potentially played this later
love the game.
and activated its ability. Next we have Halloween Night Mahjong. I don't know why you would make a Mahjong Solitaire around the theme of Halloween. That seems just weird. $2.99, English, French, German, and Russian. Yeah, considering how Asian countries play Mahjong and Asian countries very rarely celebrate Halloween, there's just a disconnect there. And I felt like I was closer to a win there. Oh well, don't let it get me down. Keep on playing, keep on playing. I don't think I'm gonna get all the daily quests done today, but if I can get 2 or 3 of them done, that's progress at least. Here we have a game just called Fluid Simulator, which I assume is just a fluid simulator, like vertical slice of a game. Early access, $3.99, English only. Steam really does need to like have a rule that if you've been on early access for more than 2 years, you're kicked out of the Steam store. Although, frankly, I don't know if there actually are any games that are in early access that have been in early access that long. I just see them when they first come out, and frankly, a lot of people may not see a game until it actually does leave early access. So that tag may work very well for other people and just not work well for me, since I'm looking at every single game when it comes out on nearly the day it came out. Next we have a Gematsu article here. Skullgirl's second encore DLC character Annie has a teaser trailer, and an unannounced DLC character has been announced. So they are adding more characters to the Skullgirls roster, which I feel like there was some controversy around the Skullgirls developer or publisher. Maybe that was cleaned up. I feel like there was someone working on Skullgirls that had controversy around them, and they kind of kicked them off the team, basically. Skullgirls might be the line, as it were, for Westerners and female fighting games. It doesn't seem like it's too extreme, but it also doesn't seem like it is too bland. What was that other game that came out just about a year earlier that was a Japanese female fighting game? That came and went, and it seemed to get mediocre reviews. And I don't know if any of the female-only fighting games have ever gotten great reviews. Because it's kind of a regressive thought, frankly. Like, if you can make a good fighter, why not fill it with both female and male fighters? Why have one that focuses solely on females? The only time I've seen that sort of work with is Rumble Roses XX, which I played on the Xbox 360 around when it came out, because at least that game knew that it was doing a cheesy wrestling game. So making it a sleazy, cheesy wrestling game with female models was obviously a step in the right direction to make it stand out from like a cheesy WWE game. Let's see. We can evolve it. We can do this.
I won't hurt you too much. Oh my, this as promised.
You don't belong here.
And ever more.
see. Next we have a top-down shooter, twin-stick top-down shooter just called Epidemic, which I'm surprised that any game would be allowed to be called Epidemic right now. Early access, $8.49, English and Chinese. It doesn't look particularly unique or impressive. It's got too much on the screen. Frankly, I can't easily tell where the main character you're controlling is.
Wingless child, let the heavens be your shepherd.
Next, we have something called The Sync Story, which looks like it's a low-effort troll Russian game for 99 cents. And that definitely was a type of game I could have curated. Next, we have one called Pawn Scum, which looks like it's probably a low-effort game
Breach of
for
contract.
$1.99, English only.
Check out my fancy footwork.
Okay. So we hit that,
I wasn't good
and
enough.
then we hit that,
Continue to believe.
You don't belong
and
here.
we hit that.
Allow me to bestow a crimson kiss.
In the turn there.
You have summoned the blade of purgation here.
So RetroArch has a 2021 hardware roadmap for Q1, Q2. They're going to try to push the Xbox Series, PC, mobile, desktop, Internet of Things, Surface Hub, and HoloLens using maybe Universal Apps. By the looks of it, the one Windows platform concept. They're also going to try and target the Apple Silicon Mac M1, which is in the MacBook Air 2020, the Pro 2013, and the Mini 2020. They're going to try and get RetroArch to run on the Mister/DE10 Nano, which looks similar in size to a Raspberry Pi, but I don't believe it actually is in any way compatible to a Raspberry Pi. These connectors probably are not pin compatible to a Raspberry Pi and all the ports and things. The bigger thought there, of course, is that the Mister, every Mister I've ever heard talked about has a fully programmable gate array, which allows you to do like hardware perfect emulation for many arcade machines, and they're continuously programming more and more of them. The thing there, though, is for general emulation, it's probably not your best bet. If you don't care about 100% accurate emulation, you are going to have to wait a long time to load up each FPGA program,
I'll see you in
and
person.
Melt under my
it
touch.
very well just may not really be worth that effort. Particularly if you just want to jump into a game, play it for 5 minutes, and leave, where I would say a Mister is probably best suited for somebody who's either going to play for at least an hour in that one console, that one game, or that they're going to specifically stay within that one console and that one chipset always.
This whip is an extension of myself.
And that might be a little expensive, frankly, if you were going to always stay within one set of chips, to the point where you might end up thinking about having 2 or 3 Misters for different chips. Is this guy gonna defeat me? Maybe.
Is it edible? Only one way to find out.
But
Tremble before my mighty roar.
they are just starting with the idea of running RetroArch on the Mister using a HPS frame buffer on a CRT with something called TinyOS Cubed, which we've got just the beginnings of it apparently starting to work. Yeah. I think you probably would still be able to emulate more games just using a Raspberry Pi than a Mister. Not as well, but well is a very relative statement. And the things we haven't seen with the Mister, or at least I haven't seen with the Mister, is emulating things like the Nintendo 64, PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3. Those are the ones that are hard for Raspberry Pis to emulate also, and they don't do a great job with. But there is at least some indication that
I love the chaos. That was fun.
that
Whoopsie
probably
daisy.
screwed me up there.
Allow me to take my cut.
Yeah. The truth is, if you want really, really good emulation, I still think you're better off using a PC than anything else. A highly powerful PC. FPGAs may in the future be the way, but the Mister as it currently is probably doesn't have enough circuits in it to emulate higher end 3rd, 4th generation consoles. Deal 3 damage. Destroy something. Okay.
With this payment, darkness stands with you.
And this.
Hurt you. Too much.
Okay. Now what do we want to do?
Okay, this one's all me.
Let your soul succumb to the void.
Okay.
Not the light.
Well, I've lost. Probably. Let's see. There was a tweet here that was retweeted. It looks like the EU is set to decide on Microsoft's Bethesda acquisition on March 5th. So I guess ZeniMax was a European company?
I lost.
Didn't really know that. Interesting. Now I'm starting to get a little worried because I can see the beginning of the end with the news, and I'd like to end early, but I'd also like to get at least 2 more victories. Even 1 more victory though would get the daily win, but I don't want to feel any motivation whatsoever to play this off screen. Let's see. Next we have a game just called White Girl, which seems to be some kind of Chinese card game. You see a bunch of anime girls. Might be a Japanese card game. I don't know why they're calling her. The game category is very original, which is the real-time color-changing strategy game. The game sets color itself as a battle state and makes the game unique.
Time to get
Yeah.
started.
So
You must die.
I don't think there's probably any racism in the name of this game, but it certainly sounds that way. This gets back to the old adage. It's like Japanese people see anime girls and anime characters and they say, yeah, that's a Japanese person, and then Westerners see it and they go, that's a white person. So yeah, when the truth is they're cartoons, so it doesn't really matter. This is single player with online PvP, English, Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. Interesting. I feel like I couldn't play this game even if I wanted to, just because of the title. It's $5.99. The good news here, I suppose, on that is, well, these anime girls look slightly interesting. They're not that interesting, and the game itself doesn't look that interesting. Speaking of potentially Japanese games, Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc, or the first Danganronpa game. There's a popular YouTuber playing it right now. Game Grumps? Yeah. And I keep watching new episodes and it keeps spoiling the story for me. And since I already have that game, I'm gonna try and find some extra time to just start playing it and get to the end before I see the end. Either I do that or I fail miserably and then I have to forget about the game, which I don't know if I'll ever actually forget the events of the storyline unless it randomizes. If it randomized and I started playing the game and it was a completely different story or completely different outcomes, that would be amazing. Also, certainly the most recent episode of Game Grumps covering that game was really just 40 minutes of them doing poop jokes, which I've seen that in a lot of mainstream, like, big YouTubers that cover games, is that they think themselves improv comics. They think they're doing something actually really funny, but half the time it just feels like they're drunk or just high or something, and they're doing very basic jokes that would appeal to 12-year-olds, I'm sure, and maybe that is their audience normally. Well, we're having someone think, but I'm not having any network problems. Next, we have a game on Steam called She Turned Me Into a Newt, which this is tagged as a point-and-click adventure. To me, it looks like it's an asset flip where they've just kind of cut and pasted characters into an ugly-looking game. $3.99, English and Hungarian. That's an odd combination. Next, we have a game called Halloween Trouble 2. This is the second Halloween game we've seen come out in January, which, boy, are you late if you were planning on releasing this in October of 2020. $4.53, English full audio. It's just a match 3 game of no interest. Retro also put out a update on their build bot, basically saying what progress they've made. They figured out a way to make Visual Studio based cores that rely on CMake to build, which just means when they release a new version of their code, they can now upload the source code to BuildBot and it will compile their code for them on multiple test servers to make sure the code works on different types of virtual machines that represent different types of actual machines. So there would be a virtual machine for like Android and PC and Macintosh and whatever else they're supporting, and different installs of operating systems. But they certainly are still working on it. Although in all fairness, they probably have more support than I do working on any of my projects, and they're probably smarter than me in that field, so they're probably making much greater strides faster than I would. Like, I honestly would have no idea how to build a build bot system. I would hire out a third party and try to look over the shoulder when that third party installed it and ask as many questions as possible. That would be my solution to a lot of issues too, is just, alright, I don't know how to do this, let's hire somebody that claims they do know how to do it, let's look over their shoulder and figure out if we can learn at least the name. Sometimes it's just the name of the software that you need to know, because that starts you down the path of Googling solutions, although a lot of times when you're hiring people, they're using weird proprietary software or very old non-industry standard software or very old industry standard software, which it can go both ways, and that may not be the best option, but it may be what people use. Inherently, that was always the argument about using Red Hat Linux, is that maybe it isn't the best Linux for your purposes, but it's the one that you can pay for customer support, and it's the one that a significant amount of people use.
Get ready to fly.
is for
There.
the weak.
Mankind's tenacity will exterminate you, vermin.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Himiko Satori, which just looks like a Chinese hex grid game with also some like RPG elements. 1954 is way too expensive. English and Japanese. Oh, I was wrong.
I have to get strong.
Yeah,
Stronger than I am
it looks
now.
like it's a JRPG and some
Stronger than I am
non-interaction elements, and then when you actually fight, you have to get into this hex grid. Yeah, that doesn't look good. Let's see, Gamatsu has an article here. Kinuro Lover Ichi Golden Times for the PS4 and Switch demo is now available in Japan. Let's see. Kiniro. Lover Ichi. Lover 1 Ichi. Or each is 1 in Japanese. Then you have 2 anime girls. It's a romance visual novel. Guess there's not much more I can extract from that. Should have attacked that.
Wouldn't. Are you as excited as I am? Well, are you? Go! Go! If you want me to hurt you, I'm
Let's
gonna
go
scoop
kill
out your
that.
guts.
Still got far to go. I won't lose next time.
See. Next, we have a Gamatsu article. 4 versus 1 multiplayer horror game, Home Sweet Home. Survive announced. 1 Spectre hunts for survivors. Now, there was a, I think it was Korean show called Sweet Home on Netflix. I wonder if this is related to that. Sweet Home was just kind of a monster movie in the form of a long-running TV series. I don't think so. I think this is more just a standard zombie game.
Stop singing until there's world peace.
But it's 4 versus 1 multiplayer. So is it 4 survivors versus 1 zombie? That seems weird. That's gonna have to be a really powerful zombie.
Ow. Ow.
Unless you control multiple zombies.
Dare you?
Left 4 Dead, it was 4 players against a whole horde of zombies.
This whip is an extension of myself.
Let's defile
Okay.
the battlefield.
And that,
I won't lose next
love
time.
the
that.
chaos. I can't sing another note.
Evolve that. I should have evolved that first.
I'm sick of being a faceless scrub.
You have summoned the blade of purgation here.
See, Gamatsu has an article here. Buddy Collection Extra. Coach Osu no Kimyo na Gonin announced for Switch. I don't think I pronounced that at all. Right? I don't even know how you would pronounce Kosh. It's probably Kocho, or Kochu, Su. Yeah. We have a trailer to see what kind of game this is. Other than as a visual novel. Not really. This is kind of an example of ignoring the Japanese words, which probably explain a lot. Yep.
I'll see you in purgatory.
So we're kind of getting back to the old ways of getting a visual novel or 3 or 5 announced every day. Even though Japan, last I heard, was still in a lockdown. But I guess they're trying to get back to business a little bit. Here we have a game on Steam called Survival High Resistance for Death, which is obviously a low effort asset flip survivor game. $9.59. English, Russian, Chinese, and Japanese. Next, we have a game called Miles of Cubes, which looks like an asset flip driving game for $2.39. English, allegedly full audio.
This whip is an extension of myself.
Like almost everything we've done today has been pretty bad. Okay. I've got to hit this. Which one of these is limiting the damage? Okay.
Whoopsie daisy.
It's this one. So hit this
No one is cuter than me.
and then hit this
That wasn't very cute.
and then hit that.
I've still got far to go. Allow me to bestow a crimson kiss. Melt under my touch.
Darn it! I won't lose next time.
See, next we have a game called Pre-Peddling Wars, which is just an asset flip survival game. By the looks of it, $9.99. Man, it's sure easy to look at every single game if they're all just going to be garbage. Next we have a game called Last Soul. Although in all fairness, it would be even easier to just not have these games listed on Steam at all. Wow, we have a point here where the images did not load. For a brief second there. Early access, free to play. Is there a game here? 2D pixel art platformer. Yeah, I'm not really seeing anything here that's unique enough to make me want to play it. And then you run into the problem of a really tiny character that you're playing as. Makes you have a fairly small hitbox and makes you more difficult to follow on screen. And then your enemies tend to be smaller because you tend to be smaller.
Pain and suffering are what I look for.
Allow me to bestow a crimson kiss.
Okay.
Whoopsie daisy.
So yeah, Last Soul's not making it to the fall list. Here we have Caravan Chaos, which is just a car crashing game. Which it looks fine, but it just looks generic. $9.89 English, allegedly full audio. I'm literally saying allegedly full audio for almost every game at this point. Here we have one called Super Brain Cube, which looks like it's an asset flip game, maybe somewhat similar to Clax. No, they're just calling it a clicker. How's this play?
You want something? You gotta fight for it.
You've got this cube. It's moving forward. Hits the next cube. Then you have to click on the cube to match the top 3 lines. Is that it? Like, you don't seem to be clicking on any of the bottom colors. It's zoomed in weirdly. $2.99 English only. Yeah, that's nothing. We have about 10 more tabs. Here we have one called Hot Dodge, which is obviously a low effort dodging game. At least thematically this is somewhat unique. 99 cents. It's not a terrible price either. It says it has full audio for all the languages it supports, but only interface for English, which I think that's exceedingly deceptive. Right, destroy an enemy.
With this payment, darkness stands with you.
Deal 3 damage. Destroy that enemy.
With this payment, darkness
Deal another 3 damage. And then attack.
Exemplary battle.
Tick Raptor has the Silent Hill DLC for Monster and Mortals. They have a video of it, so let's see. Monsters and Mortals looks a lot like that creepy Pac-Man in 3D game. I think it is exactly the sequel to that. Interesting. So, yeah. I'm surprised this game was a success. I'm surprised this game now is somehow made a deal with Konami to have Silent Hill characters, and I don't know if I'm really seeing any of the Silent Hill characters either anyways. Unless it was that person.
I did it. I won.
So I need pretty much a quick victory with Bloodcraft, and then that would get this done and set me close to getting that done. Then there's an argument to trying to play Forcecraft and Havencraft at that point to finish this and maybe get that done too. But I almost certainly will have to do some of that off screen unless I can get some massive amounts of quick victories. TechRaptor has an article here. Tabletop Simulator update adds Google Translate language support. When playing the game of life in particular, I was wondering if Tabletop Simulator would have been able to handle that. So now it has support for up to 29 different languages. But the translations are done by Google Translate. Which, okay, I mean, that's better than nothing. Frankly, if I was a small indie developer and Google Translate was the only thing I could afford because it was free, then I would use Google Translate. Although, if I was going to try and make a game, I would hope that I could be smart enough to prepare to have localization files and settings and be able to localize the words automatically. Anyways, you can do that through Unity, but like I would much prefer to be able to go and use Google Translate to translate things in the back end and then not admit that I'm using Google Translate, or at the very least have a localization team start with something to begin with instead of starting from blank paper. But yeah, I guess at the end of the day, if I was smart enough to program a game to be localized, I then am in a position where I either beg people to localize the game for me for probably free, or I use Google Translate too. On the other hand, you can make an argument that Tabletop Simulator has been a fairly expensive game and never really seems like it goes on sale. And probably deserves to be sold at closer to $2.99 than $9.99. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Destiny Island, which looks like it's just a asset flip garbage game. Free to play, English only. Guess it's not asking much other than your time. Next we have a game called Exodium Episode 5, which I believe this is one of these games that has been released over the course of a few months. January 29th, January 22nd, January 15th, January 8th, January 1st, and now Episode 7 is coming out February 12th. Yeah, so that's not making it to the fall list if you're going to flood Steam. Here we have a game called Episodion Dodgeball Speed. I don't know how you would spell that, but it definitely doesn't look good. This looks like a very, very old Tandy game colorized. $7.99, bunch of languages, way too expensive for that level of graphics.
fancy footwork. Get ready to fly.
As promised.
Whiskers!
See, next we have a game called Dear Mom. I don't think Mother's Day is anytime soon. Valentine's Day is close. So this looks like this is a walking simulator. Basically a short narrative adventure about mom, which leaves you with an unforgettable endorsement about your mom. Okay. Of course, the danger there is not everybody has the same relationships with their parents, fathers, mothers, grandparents, family members in general, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives. So when you make that assumption, you run the risk of insulting somebody or triggering someone into a pretty big rant. Whereas very recently, the spotlight for the game Home is Where One Starts told a very similar story to what I imagine Mom tells, but it was a story clearly established as there was this person talking about their memories as a child and their experiences. Most people don't have a big problem following someone else's story, but they do often have a problem of people assuming that everyone has the same experience. Regardless of that misstep, this is $5.94, English only. It's 15 to 30 minutes. It is way too expensive, and at the face of it, it does just look like a bad asset flip game. Whereas something like Gone Home probably told a similar story, but was way worth it because of all the visual polish and audio polish that existed in Gone Home and the decent writing that occurred in Gone Home. Or I won't even call it decent, I'll call it good writing. Next we have a game on Steam here called the Revolt Awakening, which
Breach of contract, huh?
this looks like a side-scrolling shooter game. There might be something here. This actually does look like a game. $11.99, English and French. And I imagine you couldn't have just churned out a game like this in the time between now and the insurrection attempt in the United States. So I guess this was already in development. Guess I'll put it on the fall list. It doesn't seem like a joke or a troll game, at least at the core so far. So we gotta hit that.
At the end of the tunnel,
and
there's only darkness.
Play that.
Allow me to bestow a crimson kiss.
And
Get ready to
just
fly.
attack.
Get ready to fly.
And go ahead and just evolve and attack.
Time to dance for your life. Get ready to fly.
Okay. So do we want to kill this? Or just play this?
With this payment, darkness stands with you.
See, Tech Raptor has an article here. Void Arena aims to buck the trend of traditional RPGs. This is a creepy looking flying pixie-like character. Let's see what this trailer looks like. It kind of looks like a VR game.
Punish the wicked, spare the innocent.
So, with a Dota-style VR game, the video's not loading. But a Dota-style video game work in VR. Let's see. Yeah, you're running around, you're Hadoking, a whole bunch of fireballs. It's all kinds of monsters. And that video show doesn't want to load right now. You pick up items. There seems to be a map. Maybe some skills, some different places. Okay, that does seem like it is at least ambitious. It's being kickstarted. Okay. Do this.
This whip is an extension of
Let's
myself.
defile the battlefield.
And then do this.
Hey, check this out. I'm sick of whipsy
Attack
daisy.
here.
Get
By
ready
your
to
will,
fly.
Here.
O Lord.
I
Here.
love the
Get
chaos.
ready to
Here.
fly.
Melt under
There.
my touch.
Get ready to
And
fly.
there.
さすがにやりますね。
So Gemetzer has an article here. Sumo Digital has acquired Pixel Ant Games. I don't recognize Pixel Ant Games. It's a Poland-based studio founded in July 2020, so less than a year old. But Sumo Digital, I guess, has been acquiring a decent amount of companies trying to grow itself. Which, okay.
I did it. I won.
There we go. We made it up to rank C3. Or C0. See, at this point, I'd have to win a Forestcraft game. Tech Raptor has an article here. The Division 2 launches Resident Evil 25th Anniversary crossover, which these are Division 2 characters wearing Resident Evil outfits by the looks of it. And I don't know what else you're really going to get from that.
My quarry won't escape.
I'm surprised anybody's still playing the Division 2. And frankly, at this point, playing the Division 2 on YouTube might get you banned, considering it's a post-United States world in the heart of DC. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Starship Tunnel. This is nothing. If I time this out right, I can play one more game. It's 59 cents, English, allegedly full audio. I can go through all of the remaining news and play one more game, and then we'll be done fairly shortly too. Like,
I owe those women a debt, you see.
Gamma Sutra has the same article. Sumo acquires Polish work-for-hire studio Pixel Ant Games. Work for hire is a nasty phrase, to say the least. Here we have G4 TV's own website saying what is B4G4, and then a whole bunch of ad copy. While we're building our amazing content for the official G4 launch later this year, we're going to be making stuff for you to watch. Comedy sketches, which that's not G4. Gameplay videos, okay. Live streams, if it's video game live streams, that's fine. Esports, hot yoga, no. We've got a lot of ideas here, but it's not G4, not yet. It's before G4, because it's before G4, get it? Yeah. Consider this a beta or an alpha, as in we don't have any idea what we're doing. This is absolutely not the way I would want to see G4 come back and launch, is to say, well, we didn't really plan things out. And that's fairly obvious that they don't have a plan and they don't know what they're doing. Right, so then that brings me to the Humble Bundle. Do we have any new Humble Bundles? There's a Make Your Own Magic and Inventions book bundle on the Humble Store. Let's see. Let's do this.
You have no right to tread here.
And
Gotta claw
then
the way through.
attack here. There's a Built to Survive bundle, but I don't think that that's new, because it has only 2 days left. I think we covered this. those are some games. And we don't have anything else. So, the other thing I wanted to mention is the top releases of December 2020 came out, and we never really covered it. So, we could go to this sales page and see the games that came out and what are top sellers, sorted randomly. Let's see, Creeper World, Sheeran, The Wanderer of Tower of Fortune, and Dice of Fate. Let's check that one out. And then Echoes of Elusive Age was a top seller. Haven was a top seller. The Dick Dine and Dash game with the Dick Girl was a top seller, and it's so nice to see them just in the same group without them being censored or subjected to being at a different level. But I also have to personally be careful about hovering over it, because I know last time I looked at that it was straight up pornographic images on the
No right to tread here. Away
on
with
the
you.
screenshots. Although they're kind of painted into a corner here, because you have this game and then you have Cyberpunk that is full of nudity and dildos also. So how can you fairly say, well, that we're going to highlight Cyberpunk 2077 for being a top seller, mostly because it was pre-ordered like crazy and that's when the money finally went through, and yet we're not going to highlight this game that also was a top seller. And if anything, the fact that it's a Dick Girl and it's a game centered around that really says something for that that fetish more than I would have thought. I wouldn't have thought that would have been a top seller, but it is. That's a little shocking even to me. All right, let's see. Everybody else gets a award. And
The hunt has
Evolve.
only begun.
Keep those eyes healed. I can't look.
Attack here.
Such a lovely
Away
couple.
with
And
you.
then attack here. See what else have we got? We have Ratropolis. I don't think I saw that one. Red Dead Online. Then the top 5 free games were Spellbreak, Leaf Blower Revolution, Soccer Manager 2021, and Slapshot Rebound. And I'm fairly certain one of these games probably had in-app purchases in it, even though it's being labeled as a free game. So yeah, this game, Sharing the Tower of Fortune and Dice of Fate, is from Spike Chunsoft, and it's mostly positive and on my follow list. It's kind of like a dungeon crawler game, an RPG for $19.99, which is pretty expensive. And then Ratropolis is very positive. It's a deck building card game, which I totally missed this one. I don't think I saw it at all. Probably was busy doing something else on December 22nd. Well, I guess I just put this on the follow list since it's so well reviewed. $17.99, English full audio, and a bunch of other languages. I don't know how much I'd want to play a roguelike deck building game where you play as rats, but it wouldn't bother me much.
It might be dry, but it's home.
The path ahead is overgrown.
Okay,
For the town's prosperity,
so
I won't let you get away.
You can still turn back.
should have evolved that one.
Gotta carve a way through.
Things I do for fashion.
And then here's Slapshot Rebound.
I've seen
which is the free-to-play game. Doesn't look terrible, particularly for a free-to-play game. It's early access free-to-play, but then it has in-app purchases, a $14.99 premium lifetime pass of some sort.
Nice marksmanship.
Alright, and then that brings me back to my Twitter feed, so we'll just see. See if there's anything new to say. Talk about. God of War PlayStation 5 Enhanced Performance Update launches February 2nd. And we probably will need to load out and load back in. You don't have another daily quest? You have like 7 minutes until the next daily quest? Alright, well. Yeah, that's something. Yeah, so I'm gonna end this stream, and then 7 minutes later I'm gonna end up probably doing another arena run, trying to get victories. Maybe with Havencraft, to get more of this done, to get more gold, and the endless cycle to accomplish something and just maintain. Let's see. There's an article worth mentioning. According to a new report by Kotaku, Google Stadia will close its 2 game studios, impacting around 150 developers, and Jade Raymond is leaving the company. Which I would believe that. Stadia as a service isn't quite done yet, but Google is looking into offering its tech to publishers. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. Susan Wojcicki is tweeting out a lot of Black History Month things. Like she's promoting that way more than she's promoted anything else on YouTube in the past 2 to 10 years to 5 years that I've been following her, maybe. Like, I don't think she's promoted anything as big as that. Which, that's fine. For Black History Month, promote Black History Month special YouTube presenters. But then the next month, don't go radio silent or start talking about CNN appearances you plan on making, or about how you're trying to get The Rock to be a YouTuber, which is never going to happen. Remember when they tried that to get all kinds of celebrities to become YouTubers and nobody actually took? Yeah, Tech Raptor has the same article. Microsoft's acquisition of ZeniMax and Bethesda Softworks must be greenlit by the EU. TubeBuddy, which makes the plugin for YouTubers, is hiring an operations manager, a full stack developer, and a mobile developer. So they must be doing fairly well if they're looking for 3 new people. Probably that'd be nice if they expanded and improved on their plugin some more. There's definitely things that could be easier with TubeBuddy, and frankly a lot of it could just be easier with YouTube in itself and cut out the middleman. Let's see. BioWare is 26 years old. Like, yeah. They've hit an anniversary. Yeah, and that is all the new news. So we have a Gematsu article. A Chinese studio, Digital Sky, has announced a high-speed sci-fi action game project called Project DT. I feel like we've seen this before, but also it might just be a case of that there's a lot of different Chinese games that look very similar to this. Like flashy. Yeah, this does look different. But see, the problem with a lot of this is this gameplay looks nice now, But we've seen a lot of MMO RPGs from China that look very, very pretty, but then play pretty awfully and are fairly just sleazy with microtransactions. And this definitely feels like a game that might be a little bit lewd. So we'll see if that improves the game or makes it worse. Yeah, this might also just be kind of a cheap clone of something like Nier Automata, which I would be very hard pressed to play a game like that, like this, before playing Nier Automata. There's something logically that's problematic also with the idea of a visor dissolving and disappearing when it has so many mechanical components over it. Like, because if it's magic nano machines, the entire faceplate should be smooth. Here's Kotaku's article here. Google Stadia shuts down 2 internal studios, changing its business focus. So you can check that if you're interested. I don't follow Kotaku enough to care what they have to say. Here we have a game on Steam called Pumpkin Days, which looks like a Stardew Valley clone with basically nothing else there. Just some asset flipped characters that seem to be kind of all over the place in their visuals. It seems like it's half trying to be a Animal Crossing and half trying to be a visual novel, and I have no idea what's going on with this half face design. This is $24.99 English only. Yep, I'm gonna skip that. Next we have a game called Space and Lasers, which is just a laser game, which we're starting to see more of those. $3.99 with a third-party EULA. No to that. Like, almost every game we looked at today was terrible. And then here we have one called Killer Infected One of Us, which is clearly just an Among Us clone with 3D graphics. And at some point somebody is going to be able to make an Among Us game in 3D that is going to steal all of the focus away from Among Us. This is $3.99, bunch of languages. This won't be that game, almost certainly, but somebody is going to pull that off. And then finally, TechRaptor has this article, links to the past, the development timeline of Ocarina of Time Part 1. So this is a long, like, retrospective article, if you're interested. But I don't think that falls under the category of new news by any means. Okay, well, we've had exactly 0 frame drops. We've had no real lags while playing, so I think I've mostly fixed my network until I change something and realize it's still giving me problems. But I'll just have to find out if that's the case. For now, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.